A very good evening to you and a warm welcome to our program Business Today on ChannelEye, your weekly business show which gives you an in-depth look at today's business landscape. Today as well, we do have a very important guest in the studios. You will get to know about him very shortly. And today on Business Today, we'll be touching on stock market and we'll get to know more about what's happening at the stock market, or the Colombo Stock Exchange to be precise. So before all that, let's introduce our guest to you.
Mr. Rajeeva Bandaranaike is the Chief Executive Officer of the Colombo Stock Exchange. He was the former CEO of Orient Finance PLC and People's Merchant PLC, and Assistant Manager of LB Finance Limited. Mr. Bandaranaike brings with him over 25 years of experience in the financial services sector, having held several senior managerial positions.
And we are honored to have Mr. Rajeeva Bandaranaike, Chief Executive Officer of the Colombo Stock Exchange, on Business Today. A very good evening to you.
Hello, good evening.
And today, as I promised, we will be talking about the stock markets. But before we get into more details, we'll also touch on how the Colombo Stock Exchange has been performing quite well despite the fact that we are facing a pandemic situation. What's the reason? How is this possible?
Well, let me start with giving you a few numbers as to how the market has performed last year in 2021. If you take the price performance, the all share price index, there was appreciation of 80% January to December. And if you take the S&P SL 20 index, which is a reflection of the largest 20 companies, again there was a growth of about 60% of that index. Even in terms of volumes, we have seen a fairly significant increase both in number of transactions and also in terms of turnover volume. So overall, it has been extremely successful year. Now, to get to the reasons, I think there were two or three main reasons why the market got activated. One is the low interest rate environment that is prevalent in Sri Lanka, that has prompted many investors to switch from fixed income instruments to equity and investment in shares. So that's one primary reason why there has been more investors into the market and creating a demand for share trading, which has propelled the market into high volume transactions being transacted on a daily basis. The second reason is that companies have been doing fairly well and they have seen good profitability, which has again prompted interest among investors. The third reason also may be that there were many, due to certain import restrictions, I think some of the monies that would have ordinarily gone for certain imports may have flowed into the stock market as well, into shares. So I think a combination of those reasons have resulted in a fairly active market, I think.
And let's talk about the companies which are performing well during this pandemic situation. In your opinion, if you could just give us an insight as to the sectors which are doing well at the stock market.
Well, yeah, if you look at it at an aggregate level or across the board, majority of the companies have done extremely well despite the challenges that we have seen due to the pandemic. I think they have risen to the occasion very well and strategized themselves well enough to face it and overcome some of the challenges that the pandemic has brought about and come out on top. And we have seen record profitability in the listed corporate sector. Actually, we have reached all-time highs in terms of aggregate profits of most of the sectors. Of course, there have been certain sectors like tourism and hotels which suffered a setback last year, and some of the import-oriented companies and well, and retail-oriented companies. But certain sectors like logistics, construction, diversified companies, exports, companies involved in exports that have done extremely well, and as a result we have seen a majority of the companies actually having reporting very good results in the first 3 quarters, and the last quarter results are due. And I think the way we have seen it, it is most likely that even the last quarter results will be fairly good.
So the boom is real.
Yes, of course. I think it's backed by strong growth earnings of companies.
And let's also talk about this current topic, which is pretty viral all over. Everyone's talking about how the country's credit rating was downgraded to CCC by the Fitch Ratings, indicating that the investment is a substantial risk. So let's touch on this topic as well.
So if you look at the stock market, I don't think it has dampened the sentiment of local investors, certainly. If you look at the activity in 2020, in 2021, and even this year, for the first few days of January this year, we have seen domestic investors maintaining the same kind of enthusiasm despite some of the rating downgrades. I think the rating downgrades may impact the sentiment of certain foreign investors who may want to come into the country, and there again I think the mandate that certain foreign fund managers have may prevent them from investing in markets which have lowered their ratings. So I think the impact would be largely from potential foreign investors who would be prevented from their own mandates in investing in companies. But then again, these are, I think, temporary phenomena that we are seeing, and we have seen many countries going through similar issues of rating downgrades, and I think once our economy improves, we can see these foreign flows back into the country.
So do we intend to do something about attracting foreign investors during
Yes,
this
certainly.
period?
So yes, certainly. So we are continuing with our efforts in attracting both investment from the diaspora as well as foreign institutional fund managers. Of course, I think some of the macro items in the economy, like the exchange rate, the rating, country rating, etc., have to be improved in order for foreigners to return. If you look at foreign investment in the stock market from 1990, we have had a fairly healthy inflow of foreign, and over the period, over the last 30 years, we have seen certain years there have been outflows, certain years there have been inflows. So then there have been a lot of foreign investors who have taken long-term positions in the market, and they understand the country, they know Sri Lanka, they like the country, they like the companies that they invest in, they are upbeat about some of the sectors. So we are confident that foreigners will return, and even if you take today, of the total shares that are listed, still about 25% are held by foreigners. So I think the confidence levels are still continuing. Yeah.
And do we see a rise in people getting into the stock market in Sri Lanka?
Yes, of course, there has been a broad basing of the market, particularly locally. So if I go back to 2019, we had about 18,000 active investors. This grew to about 30,000 in 2020, and we saw this figure increase into about 62,000 in 2021. So fairly significant growth in the number of active investors. So there has been active participation. Yes, the numbers have been growing, and the other thing that we have seen recently is that traditionally we have seen a bulk of the accounts that are open from the western province, but if you take last year, for example, maybe 80% of the accounts opened would have been from the western province or has been from the western province. But if you take last year, this number from the western province has dropped to about 56%, which means more people from areas outside the western province are opting to invest in the market. Is a very good sign, which is also a sign that the market is getting broad based, something that we want to do for a very long time.
And how about the youth? Do we see them getting into the stock market as well?
So that's the next trend that we saw. So that out of all the accounts open, traditionally we had the 50 plus kind of investor in the market, and that was our typical profile. But over the last,
who wanted to rest at home and then
more close to retirement,
close
that
to
they started getting into the market. So it's the profile was mostly 50 plus kind of investor. But in the last 2 years, we have seen that over 80% of the accounts that are open are below the age of 40. So there is a definite shift in a younger set of investors getting into the market, and I think it's a very good trend, a very good long-term trend that we are seeing in the market. Yeah.
And I would say the pandemic also led to it, and people kind of were more involved with technology as well, and trying to find different means of income and investment, and also where to invest their money. That has also been like something they've been pondering about.
Yes, perhaps. I think we also did a digitalization project
Right.
end 2020, enabling anybody using a mobile phone to onboard themselves and then conduct all their trading activities and do all your stock market activity through the mobile phone. I think that may have prompted a younger, more tech savvy set of investors who wouldn't ordinarily bother to walk into a stockbroker office and fill up all those forms and spend all that time in getting into the market. Whereas I think when they were given the option of accessing the market through a mobile phone or to digital means, I think that has encouraged this younger set of investors to come in. So I think the equation has worked well, one from a standpoint of low interest rate environment and the market getting activated, giving good returns, and also us providing the accessibility so that they can get in and out easily.
It's probably very user friendly, so people find it very convenient to have a look at how things work at the Colombo Stock Exchange,
Yes,
so
of
that they
course,
could
yeah.
depend on it and invest. So let's also talk about any like projects. Is the Colombo Stock Exchange intending to conduct any awareness projects to probably the rural areas, the areas you've not touched on? Because I think many people are not aware of this as well, that they could invest in the Colombo Stock Exchange and things could turn out to be really profitable for them. So have you all intended to do any programs of that nature?
Yeah, so if you take last year, we have conducted something like over 500 webinars and seminars around the country in small groups, as well as a lot of webinars. We are very active on social media, so you get heaps of YouTube videos so that you can follow and learn, and we conduct lectures. So a whole heap of awareness in all three languages is ongoing. Then we have also planned to go into the regions and support the stockbroking companies by us also expanding our branch network. We are hoping to open up another 4 centers as well, in addition to the 8 branches that we are currently operating, to supplement and complement the efforts made by stockbrokers to go into areas outside Colombo. So a lot of work is being done to broad base the market, to introduce the market to areas outside Colombo. Yeah.
I think what we're doing right now is also an
Somewhat,
awareness to the
Of
youth
course.
out there to get to know more about the Colombo Stock Exchange, and that they could also invest in the stock market. So what's the age group and who can actually invest? That's another question I wanted to ask.
Yeah, so anybody over the age of 18 is eligible to open account, and it's a very simple process as well, where you can digitally onboard by taking a photograph of yourself, upload your national identity card, and then digitally sign the relevant agreements, and then you submit this information.
It's also going green as well, isn't it?
Yes, of course, yes. So it's completely paperless, and then you can select a stockbroker of your choice. You have all this information contained in the app, trading information about companies, economic information, announcements made by companies, tutorials. So whatever you need is all contained in that app. So you really don't have to move from where you're seated, and then you can open an account. You get access to online information, you can start trading, and when you want to receive money, you can transfer money from your bank account electronically. So it's a seamless, easy way to get in and out, accessibility, and in all 3 languages as well. So it doesn't matter what you're familiar with, you can still operate very easily.
So do they need to have a certain knowledge on the stocks before they start this, or is there somebody to like tell them what to do?
I think that's where the tutorials come in very useful. Of course, we conduct webinars to different segments of investors at different levels, so you can follow any of those. You can also self-learn by watching those various YouTube videos that we have uploaded as well. you need to invest some time to learn what stock markets are. There is an element of risk in investing in stock markets. Share prices can come down as much
Drastically
as
as well.
they can go up. So there is this concept of volatility and the risk associated with it. So I think it's very important to understand what investing is, how one can invest, and do some basic background work before you really enter the stock market. So you need to invest some time in learning about companies, learning about stock markets.
It's all about having the passion to do it as well, and the criteria would be like if they're above 18 and above, and also they need to at least spend some time on getting to know how everything works and about the stock market. So it's about taking risks as well, isn't it? So when it comes to a business too, when you invest in a business, it's the same thing.
Yeah, so when you talk about risk, we can't eliminate risk.
Exactly.
You know, when you walk on the road, you can get knocked down. So we carry risk with us all the time, but I think it's about minimizing the risk and managing the risk. And I think all those tutorials will teach you, will help you to strategize how to minimize and manage your risk, but yet become a successful investor. For example, we call it the diversification risk. When you have some money, you don't put all of your money into the stock market. You would put perhaps part of it. You put part of it
It's
in fixed
basically like
income
don't
securities.
carry all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly that concept. And even in the stock market, when you do invest, you prefer to sectors. You spoke about sectors. So you don't put all your money into one sector, because if that sector does badly, then probably you run a risk of losing money on that particular sector. So you select several sectors and maybe distribute your investment into different sectors. And once again, within that sector, again you do a further diversification. You don't invest in one company within that sector. You diversify into several companies, so that even if one particular company does badly, you're still your risk is cushioned from the fact that you have spread your investment, and the gains that you make from the other companies will offset any losses that you make from a company that's not doing well. So there are different strategies that you can use to minimize and manage your risk and still be a successful investor.
Exactly. It's about understanding what's happening as well, and as you very correctly mentioned, it's important to kind of get more information about different sectors and spread it out properly and strategically as well, if I'm not mistaken. So we've come to the latter part of the program, and finally I just wanted to touch on this a little bit as well, because we see many people getting into crypto trading. So that's also a kind of an investment, and many youth are getting into this. So what's your say on this?
Well, I think cryptos are here to stay, and I think more people are getting into crypto. I think it's about understanding cryptocurrency. It's another asset class. Of course, it's not within our purview, but it's another asset class which is taking the world by storm virtually. It's good to learn about it, good to understand it, and of course there are risks associated with it, and I think it's important that one gets a very good knowledge prior to getting into cryptocurrency trading. Yes,
Exactly, because as we mentioned that every investment, every business carries a risk. So even this has kind of started getting trending here in Sri Lanka. So we see many people trying to get into it, and right now when the Colombo Stock Exchange also offers investments, I think the youth should consider, as you mentioned, we need to look at options when investing and invest wisely, isn't it?
yes, of course.
So any advice to maybe the budding entrepreneurs or people who wants to get into the stock market, not as an investor but open up their companies? Are you allowing any entrepreneurs or individual entrepreneurs also to list their companies?
Yes, of course. So there is opportunity for entrepreneurs. We have quite a wide criteria for different companies to get in. We can accommodate the large conglomerate, we can accommodate the mid-sized companies, or we can even accommodate the SME type of companies, and we have seen the typical SME company coming into. So as an entrepreneur, I think the stock market will provide you yet another different avenue where capital can be raised. So you have your bank financing, you have your other private investment channels that you can tap through private equity investors. You will also have the capital market or the stock market, which can potentially fund your company. So I think entrepreneurs have made good use of the stock market. If you look at last year, we have had absolutely excellent year where the primary market was concerned, where capital raising was concerned. We had over 120 billion in both debt and equity capital being raised through the stock market, and we had 14 equity IPOs, initial public offerings, all of which was subscribed on the opening day itself, which just shows that there is demand for investing in new companies that come to the market. We have few more companies that are due to come in this year as well. So I think it's a good time for entrepreneurs to consider the stock market also as a means of raising capital.
So even this could be done through the app, is it?
Not necessarily.
Right.
Listing a company is somewhat different and more involving than merely investing in the stock market. So there again, you need to talk to an investment bank and structure your company to make it ready to be brought into the public listed space. So it's a different process altogether, but something that a lot of companies are looking at very seriously. And as you quite rightly said, yes, it's an opportunity for entrepreneurs.
Exactly. And with that, it's time for us to wind up this week's edition of Business Today. But thank you so much for giving us an in-depth insight on how the Colombo Stock Exchange works and how we saw a boom during this pandemic situation as well. And it is an opening for all the entrepreneurs to maybe get more revenue through this Colombo, more capital through the stock market as well. So thank you so much for being a part of the show.
You're welcome. Pleasure.
With that, we conclude this week's edition. Thank you so much for tuning in. We had Mr. Rajeeva Bandaranaike, Chief Executive Officer of the Colombo Stock Exchange, with us on Business Today. Have yourself a pleasant evening.